Welcome to a very special Consulting Matters podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Jordan, and today I have my very, very precious client and colleague, Brenda, on the show. And we are going to show you behind the scenes about how do you go through a brand building process. So, Brenda has a coaching business and she is in the process of repositioning it to really focus more on the clients and opportunities that she wants to go after. So, become a fly on a wall and get to experience our process. So, Brenda, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you so much for being a vulnerable guinea pig for everybody to see about the messy brand building process.
Absolutely. The good thing I trust you, Betsy. So here we go.
Yay, trust.
Yep.
Okay. So let's start off with your business. So well, actually, before we get into your business, could you share a little bit about your background and then a little bit more about your existing business as a forgiveness coach?
Absolutely. So the background has been almost, well, about 8, 9 years as a forgiveness coach. So that's what I am certified in, and that's what has been my whole focus. And so, what got me there were, several divorces, a life of needing forgiveness. Forgiveness kind of found me, and I think people can relate to that. And because it wasn't intentional that I was thought I was going to be in corporate forever.
Mm.
And, I had 30 plus years in corporate when this all happened, but my body was breaking down. So that led me into this, what can I do differently? And that's when I found the forgiveness coaching. So I've been focusing on that. And as long as you've known me, it's kind of like, I do more than forgiveness. So forgiveness is a piece of it, but I also guide women through other things, especially through midlife, right? Going through claiming, identifying with themselves, reclaiming themselves, and doing and really kind of owning who they are, separate from all the labels and the hats and the pressure that we felt that we had to perform. And so that has been my story. And so I've noticed, over the years that, I'm working more with women like that who really want to go, who am I separate from those things? If that makes sense.
Well, it sounds like in your journey, it sounds like that you had the corporate life, but then the school of hard knocks, kind of like knocked you down a bit, and you got a lot of healing out of your own work, and you want to pass that
Mhm.
forward, which I think is a common story for a lot of coaches and people who want to build a business. But I think then that we wind up in this challenge is like, I'm not sure which aspect of my story or what actually this is going on. So when you've been positioning yourself as a forgiveness coach, like why how's that work for you? And, what kind of clients were you hoping? And why is it that you want to work on your brand now? Like, why are we doing this work? Why are we having this session right now?
So, what has led me to this is kind of just looking again at myself as I have gone through different phases of my own life and then getting to this point of what really made me take a different look was the diagnosis of dementia for my husband. Right? I had to step back and become caregiver, realizing that that really wasn't my forte. Right? I can't be a caregiver and a wife. And so really making some hard decisions, but just stepping back from the business is what gave me a different look at it, right? I got a
Mm,
30,000-foot view when you step back because you just did your,
yeah.
taking the sabbatical, right? When you can step back from the business, you get this view that you're like, "What? Wait a minute. What makes me happy in the business? What doesn't? Where do I wanna go and who do I wanna help?"
Yeah.
And as I looked at myself on what I needed and the help that I got and the support that I received, that changed how I looked at myself and what I was doing. That's when I decided, "Oh, I really need to go through like a rebrand. I need to kind of re-identify." I don't even know what to call it, really.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? A reclaiming. I don't even know what it is. But that's what led me to looking at my business and looking at the people that I had served and who it worked for, who it didn't, and how I wanted to move forward.
I feel like you and I have been connected in several different ways. Like we've been connected through Carol Cox's Speaking Your Brand. And as a branding person, I always sit there and like try to figure out like, well, what is it they do? Am I the ideal client? Do I know someone who is? And I think and I kind of suspect, I wonder if the forgiveness label is too squishy and too unclear for people to really understand, like, "Oh, it's me and the problem."
Well, it is. There are some people that I mean, they come to me specifically for forgiveness. Like they have a forgiveness of an ex, especially, right? Either a colleague, an ex, a partner, business, or something like that. Or they know that they have a parental, they have something, the mother wound or father wound. So that's been coming to it. But most of the time, what happens is you're right. It's a little too squishy. It's like, because I don't look at forgiveness as just saying I'm sorry. Right? And looking for forgiveness. Forgiveness is a bigger umbrella because it's owning who I am. And it's looking at life and relationships differently so that I can show up and have the life that I want to live, not based on the past, but based on who I am today because of what I've gone through and my future. So I haven't been able to really express that.
Yeah.
So people hear forgiveness and they're like, most people have a love hate relationship with
S
forgiveness.
so you're really identifying a positioning challenge that many people have.
Okay.
That's not just you, is that we position ourselves with, like, our idea or our perspective. So you're trying to put, like, some sort of new idea about forgiveness into the market, which Google will call that, like, a push word. Like,
Mm,
I did this mistake too. I would say, like, "I wanna help ignite transformation," or I don't know, inside out transformation was a phraseology I was using. Like, "I wanna do that. I wanna ignite inside out transformation." And I
okay.
remember calling Google and say, "Hey, what do you think?" Maybe I could do some ads, or like, those are push words. You're trying to push an idea onto the market rather than responding to the market.
Mm,
So that could be one of the challenges. And the other challenge that a lot of us do when we're doing our brand positioning is we position against pain points rather than the strategic problem. We position as like, I feel lost, I feel anxious, I feel overwhelmed, or some emotional
mm,
state rather than, well, what is those feelings? Are there symptoms of something more strategic and significant?
'kay.
And so you're kind of like a lot of people do that. I did that. Like as I'm working on my rebrand, I realized like I was doing the same mistake as I was trying to position myself against the clarity problem and the confidence problem rather than I'm at an inflection point in my business and I'm trying to get to the next level and everything I have in place is positioning me for today versus tomorrow. So it's not
Mm,
like it's not like, oh, it's just so clear to me and I did it all perfectly. I didn't either.
yeah,
Um, but so that's I think that I just want to normalize the challenge and really point out a lot of times what we do is we position ourselves against the end of the transformation. Like ultimately forgiveness is the last phase of like acceptance forgiveness, it's a phase
yeah,
of a process and it's too far beyond. And when you're positioning yourself, it's at the beginning of the process. The
'kay.
second is like pushing our ideas into the market using those push words. And then the third is we position ourselves against the emotional state rather than the strategic problem. So I
Okay.
think that so I just want to point those things out and just validate that we all do that. It's not easy to figure out our own brand.
Mm,
Um,
right.
but in our last conversation, I want to bring us up to speed when it comes to the strategic problem. So you and I had gone over all the different reasons why high achieving women are the people that you've identified that you want to help. We got to that point of
Yes,
clarity.
right.
That's still clear, correct?
That's clear. Yep,
And people who have accomplished something, so they're at least 45 plus.
right.
Okay, so we're still solid here.
We are.
Okay. What we identified last time, so last time when we met, we went over all the different ways and reasons why a high achieving woman might hire a coach.
Mhm.
What would be the context that would motivate her? And we talked about, is it career? Is it burnout? Is it, the basic midlife transition? And what we landed on is there's a significant thing that she's successful at work, but she's not successful in her personal relationships and she's dealing with a series of toxic relationships. Is that still accurate? Is that still where
That
you
is
want?
yes, that is still accurate.
Okay,
Yep,
so
yes.
let's pick up from there.
'Kay.
So, talk to me more specifically, not in general about women, but what would it be like? How does the world of a high achieving woman with success at work, with everything from a professional standpoint looks amazing, looks like she has it all. She's got money, she's got financial resources, but behind the scenes at home, she's got just a very significant toxic relationship or a series of toxic relationships. How does her world look and feel to her? Paint me the picture of her life.
How it would look is where you feel confident, strong at work, right? But when you think about going home, most women would wanna work more because they don't wanna go home. Because at home, there is either a place where they don't wanna feel vulnerable or they are being tested in a way. So, for instance, a relationship, so we'll say like an intimate relationship where there's an expectation from the partner and they can never please them. So my clients wouldn't be able to please them. So they're trying harder and harder to be the good girl, the perfect person, the confident person. But they're at home, they don't have that confidence because what's happening is there is a pressing of buttons for per se, of emotion, of, insecurity, of doubt, like and it's also there's in toxic relationships, there's a way where we feel crazy. The
Mhm.
client will feel crazy, like the partner is telling them things that they're doing or accusing them of that they're not doing, that the partner's actually doing, but there's a sense of doubt. Really, that's the feeling, is there's a sense of doubt, there's a sense of, "Is this right? My gut tells me one thing, but I'm hearing this other thing, and so is that right?" And so they end up performing or doing things that they don't really wanna do or feeling like, I can't get this right. How come I can do this at work, but I can't do this here?"
That's the strategic problem. You just the last thing that you said is what makes it different than other toxic relationships. Why is it that I could have the confidence and the clarity and the ability to, make change in my environment at work? I'm confident in my opinion. Why can't I figure it out at home? There's a disconnect. That's
Yes.
what makes it different with a high achieving woman versus other profiles. Like if you have somebody who's a stay-at-home mom, not to say that it's not one's better than the other, it's just different problems. But if it was a
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom who's in that environment, it might affect her differently
Mhm.
than it would be. So I think when we get into when you're really thinking about your brand position, you always have to keep in mind it's this particular person in this particular situation, which
Mhm.
will create a different experience. Why is this the one area I can't figure out?
Yes.
And maybe there's some things in the diagnostic later on when you work with her is like she has a pleasing tendency that makes her high achiever at work,
Mhm.
but it's detrimental in work or, in a relationships. You might unpack that, but really at the end of the day, the starting point is she's a successful person at work, at home, and she's wondering why can't I figure this out? That's the position that's like, okay, I need somebody that's specific.
Yes.
Okay, so can we label that as, like, how the world looks to feel how her world looks and feels?
Mhm.
Um, c and can we add more to it by saying, okay, so ultimately, what does she want? Does she want to stay in this relationship? Does she wanna overcome? Like, what does she want on the other side? Like, if she had a goal, like, what would be
Mhm.
her goal that she has at this particular point? Is it just to save the relationship? Is it to leave the relationship, show up differently in the relationship? Is she blaming herself, or what does she want on the other side?
Well, I think part of it is she's blaming herself, but confused about blaming herself. Because what she's doing is the input, the external input that she's getting is that she's the problem. But she's, "Wait a minute. How can I do this other places but not here? How am I the problem?" So there's confusion. And a lot of times there is a feeling of, "I wanna make this work." And it could be and that's where I think part of the figuring out, the getting the clarity is gonna be important, is, "I wanna make this work, but why? Why do you wanna make this work? If this person is continuing to cause doubt within you, why would you wanna make the relationship work?" Okay? So that's one of the things that we would that's part of what she wants is clarity.
So if she had clarity, what would she be able to get?
So if she had clarity, she would be able to make a decision based on herself, not based on anything external. So she
S
would be right?
so she wants to make a decision. So, okay, so this is where we can kinda move to the goal. This is great.
Okay.
So she wants clarity. so she can make a conscious, empowered decision. And
Yes.
what's she making a conscious decision about? And if she made that conscious decision, what would she get on the other side of that?
So the conscious decision that she's trying to make is, well, one of them could be, and this is what's happened with other clients, is do I stay, do I go?
Mhm.
Right? That's a huge decision to make. And they want to make that decision based on who they are as, inside. Like I want to feel stronger and confident to be able to see clearly in this relationship.
But
So,
if she
okay.
had that,
Yeah.
let's get to the other side, like, let's get to
Okay.
her goal.
Okay. Well, if she had that, she would make the decision that no, probably more than likely, this relationship isn't working, right? And that I want to be able to feel more fulfilled, happy, etc. for herself, not
So
based on a relationship.
okay, so let's make it more tangible. So if her
Yeah.
starting point is that I'm successful in work and I'm not successful in my relationships. Is the other side is I want to be equally successful in my relationship as I am in work.
Yes. There we go. You
Okay,
said that. Yeah.
so that's her goal. So we need to label that because that's what we're going to need is she wants to be equally successful at home as she is in work. The what's getting in her way is she doesn't understand why. So what's in her way is lack of clarity
Yeah.
is one of the things that's in her way. But what we're positioning is against the problem is she's successful at work, but not at home. The other side, in terms of her goal, is she wants to be equally successful at work and she is at home.
Yes.
What's in her way is lack of clarity. She
Mhm.
has a total lack of clarity. Her mind is foggy. She has no idea. And so she's stuck and she's indecisive and not sure
Mhm.
which way to go. So there's a lack of clarity in
Right.
the middle that's keeping
Yes.
her. So that's one of the big things. Is there other things that you would say that if you put the 2 input, like the starting point and the ending point is I'm successful at work, but I'm not successful at home. On the other side, I'm successful at work and I'm successful at home.
Mhm.
What's in the middle? One is lack of clarity and feeling stuck. Is there other things?
As far as what she's feeling,
Not what she's feeling, what is in her way?
what is
Is
in her
it
way.
like there's emotions, like we wanna emotions
Right.
are indicators
Yes, they
of
are.
other things, but, like, we wanna get a little bit more tangible. Like, yes, I could say, like, my clients, like, they have, like, imposter syndrome and they have fears of money, but I don't wanna build my entire brand against these emotional states. Like, well, why don't you have imposter syndrome? It's like, well, they don't have clarity of how to package their experience into a business model. They don't have clarity on their offers. Like they need clear offers, they need better
Mhm.
messaging. Like those are the things that are in the way. So if you're going to say like what is in her way, she's absolutely not clear
Right.
on who she is, what she wants and what's going on in her relationship. She's definitely feeling stuck.
Yep. And in my work, what I work a lot on is beliefs and patterns. So there are habits and behaviors that are being repeated over and over again in relationship
So like
that she is not
unprocessed
aware of.
trauma. But what is
Yeah,
she aware
absolutely.
of? What is she aware of that's in her way?
Well, she's aware of I keep doing the same, like I keep getting involved with the same person. It's like a same content, different package is what I call it. So
Got it.
it's like, why is that? It's the same person, same behaviors. They show up as that the knight in shining armor, and then all of a sudden it turns to crap, right? And so it's like that's where the she's treated the same, she's dismissed. She notices this that there is a commonality in
So I might
relationships.
So we need to
Go
put
ahead.
that as part of the starting point is she's successful at work with a history of toxic relationships that there's a disconnect and she keeps doing this over here and makes work successful. She does
Yeah,
the same thing over here and she keeps having a series.
right.
So you don't want to just work with somebody who's like everything they've had wonderful relationships and they just have this one off. It's really for you. It's somebody who's had a history of
Right.
this
It's a pattern. Yes.
as a pattern.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a pattern. So she's aware of it, but she doesn't know exactly why, right? There's an idea of, "Huh, here it is again. Why do I continue to attract, emotionally unavailable people?" Right? That
Yeah.
comes up. And then eventually there is some knowledge here that, "Wait a minute, I'm a common denominator. I'm
So she's
involved in all of
but
this."
that's some of the stuff that you're going to teach
Yeah.
her,
Yes.
but that's not what she's experiencing. This is where it's like when from a branding standpoint, when you work on your ideal client, you
Okay.
have to almost put horse blinders on and pretend you don't exist.
Okay.
Like this is their world beforehand.
Okay.
So you don't like when you're talking about like what's standing in your way, you don't want to you're not educating her. She which might be standing in her way is she might feel a lack of clarity, like the situation's super confusing and ambiguous. She might
Yes.
be experiencing like I like what's she might feel like I have you know, family obligations and sunk costs and, like, there's, like, all kinds of things that kinda go into the mix,
Mhm.
but, like, what's in her way could be things along the lines of, like, lack of strategy, skills, tools,
There we go.
perspective.
Perspective especially.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely perspective.
So, this would be good. I wanna continue on, like, I would probably say as homework is, like, let's just get clear of lack of strategy about lack of skills in,
Okay.
lack of tools to, lack of perspective on, and kind of fill in the blanks from her perspective, from
Oh,
her
okay.
world. Because those are the things that she's actually gonna go out and search for. So she might say, "I don't know how to set boundaries," so she's gonna
Yeah,
go Google, like, "How do you set boundaries?"
she
Like
will.
there's,
Yeah.
things along those lines.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
that's good.
So this is another big part that we wanna talk about to help you with your positioning, is really around what has she tried and didn't work, and why didn't it work? So pretend you don't exist. This is all the stuff that she's done long before she's ever met you. So what has she tried to solve this
So
problem?
yeah, self-help books. She's tried Googling, like you just said, Googling, how to set boundaries or what's wrong with me. That comes up a lot. What's wrong with me? Listening to a lot of relationship podcasts, especially taking some classes, that they found on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, finding those classes, and also, done a lot usually there's been work done like therapy, like
Mhm.
talk therapy, EMDR, different types to try to figure out why? What's wrong with me in this area? Why am I not good in relationships? So they're aware, smart, intelligent, aware, like, okay, they're taking what they know, like, at work, like how to become better at certain things, and they're doing the same thing in their private life. Yet, it's not getting clear. It's
So
not helping, or it helps short term.
why okay, so let's bucket it.
'Kay.
Why would the DIY stuff like a book or a course, why doesn't it work? Why is it insufficient for this particular person?
It's insufficient because there is something else going on. There's a story underneath. So intelligently, they can come at it with, "Okay, I'm gonna change how I approach things. I'm gonna be, more communicative. I'm gonna listen better, or I'm gonna change." Usually, the women are willing to change who they are and what they're doing to try to fit into this toxic relationship.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop you here because you're doing what a lot of coaches do.
Oh,
You're trying to coach her through your market scan. You're
oh,
trying to
okay.
tell her why you think that those things
Oh,
didn't work. Like, saying because you have a philosophy. Like, what you're trying to get her to is to see that she's the common denominator, and the only person that she can fix is herself, and she has to work through her own codependent patterns. Like, I kinda see that that's what you're getting her to,
yeah.
but that's not her positioning.
Okay.
Like, so why would picking up a book not work for a high achieving woman who's successful at work and not at home, and she gets a relationship book? Why is that insufficient from her standpoint? Like, why is that not working for her?
Well, it's usually not working because she doesn't have somebody there to help point out to her these incongruencies.
You're coaching her again. From her
Okay.
standpoint, why is that not working for her? Number 1, are how many books are out there about the uniquenesses of a high achieving woman in a successful work and in a toxic relationship? How many books are geared towards a high achieving woman and her psychology?
Not a lot.
Okay, how much can a book do for you in terms of, like, really giving you the clarity you need on your unique situation?
A book can provide information and it can point out strategies, like this is the reason why, but it doesn't really give you the how.
It's so in general, like, when you think about it, when you're kind of coming up with, like, "Where do I fit in?" You
Yeah,
need to look at the situation from her perspective around how would she experience the solution she's trying right now without putting your filter. The market scan that you might do is you have to put a horse blinders on. You do not exist. Your perspective doesn't exist. You have to observe her. We'll bring you into the process in a second,
yeah.
but we have to be able to look at it from her perspective. So most people, if they try a DIY solution where they listen to relationship books, or if they listen read not read or listen to books, podcasts, courses, all that kind of stuff, it might work to gives you a little bit of knowledge and insight, but it's not like practical specific to her. It's not customized to her situation.
Okay.
So thinking about, like, what she might be trying doesn't work from her perspective. Therapy, why would therapy like, so she goes to a therapist. Why would therapy not work?
She's telling the same thing over and over again, or the therapist isn't familiar with, well, no, the therapist should be familiar with, but a lot of times what happens in therapy is people will come to me and say, "Therapy didn't work because I'm telling the same story over and over again and I'm not getting a solution from the therapist." So they're not getting that goal that you talked about.
So so thinking about I think when it comes to this particular part, we need to really put the lens of a successful woman going to therapy. And why that wouldn't work. We have to really look at it from her perspective, like this particular woman. So if she's in a toxic relationship, so let's say she's strong-willed, outspoken and that kind of thing. She's in marriage counseling, and you got the toxic person over there. Like, what do you think that might turn out to look like? Or, like, why would that not work? Either they don't understand her psychology of, how she's wired, or they might not understand the dynamics of the toxic relationship. They
Correct.
might, like, just shove, like, attachment theory or something along those lines, like, so, like, walk through, like, pretend you were at the very beginning part of your journey and you were trying out all those solutions, and think about, like, how did you feel when you were trying out those solutions? I'm sure you tried those out. Why would they not be
Mhm.
sufficient?
Well, they weren't sufficient because of the fact of either, well, feeling unheard or misunderstood, for one, and that the other party, like sometimes the therapist would take, his side in my case, and or take my side. So it wasn't ever like with an equilibrium or an equal session, because they would either believe one or the other, because he was a charmer. I mean, he was good in my case at manipulating. And so getting people to say, more along the lines of, "This is really what happened, so it's her fault." Now, as a smart person, you're trying to come at it from, it's like for me, having the emotions and then trying to think through, there was incongruency there. I was really being sidelined. So, that's the case of therapy, is especially marriage counseling, is like, taking one side or the other and not being able to be heard exactly, and him not being willing.
So let's say you have someone who goes to marriage counseling or to one-on-one therapy, and it's somebody who doesn't have a lot of financial means. She's not professional, she's not high achieving, versus a high achiever who has financial means, who has money, has success and a career and a way of providing for herself. How might she have a different experience in that environment?
The Having the money piece, I don't think matters.
Really? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna push you on that one because just
Yeah.
getting in
Yeah.
I worked with a dating coach and I worked with a therapist who deals with
Mhm.
high achieving women in some of these situations.
Yeah.
Is somebody who's a high achieving woman in these situations, does she get judged in a different way than somebody who doesn't? Why don't you just leave him? Why
Yeah.
don't you just get out? What is wrong with you? Like,
That's true.
is there some of that? Is there extra shame? Is like, I don't understand how I could be successful here, but I can't do it here.
Absolutely. There's shame and there's guilt.
So, what I want to get you to is really clarifying the market scan. So, we have your ideal client. I want to get to this part because I want to bring you in to figure out why is your solution superior, different and superior to everybody else. So, like the reason there's a reason why I'm harping on this is
Yeah.
we really want to get to like why are these all insufficient or they're good but not sufficient 100%.
Okay.
So one thing could be is that they're not customized to her particular psychology and situation. One might be is that therapists are, kind of like leading with a particular methodology or an approach to couples therapy, and they don't necessarily see the situation for what it is. So when we talk about what working with you, we could say that one, it's a judgment free zone, that you're somebody who gets what she's gone through and there's no judgment. Second, you have like proven
Mhm.
applicable principles that are very customized to her, that like that's kind of where we're going.
'Kay.
So, so kind of like as you reflect on where we're going, does that help you clarify like what has she really tried if you were looking at the market and say, and why hasn't it worked specifically for this particular person?
Well, I think that it takes me a second. Um, I don't know exactly what you're getting at. What what is are you looking for words? Are you looking for statements? Are you looking for experiences? Because if I'm not in there, then I'm still projecting my experience onto the client.
Where I'm going with this part in the market scan, and this is an excellent question. I'm glad that you're asking me. Because, when we figure out our positioning and where we fit in the market is we wanna look at, like, what have they tried that hasn't worked, so because there's this is where the place is that you're fulfilling. So we wanna be able to create your brand positioning where you're either meeting an unmet or undermet need in the marketplace.
Okay.
And so when I think about, like, the work that I do, if I were gonna do a market scan,
Mhm.
is I would say that there's tons of branding agencies out there, like and a lot of consultants and coaches could go to them. Where it falls short is the branding is just connected to visual, logos or what have you, but it's not connected to the overall brand. That might be an issue when and they don't necessarily understand the complexity of consulting and coaching. My clients also can go to other business coaches who could help them land clients and grow their
Mhm.
business, but a lot of them don't have the end to end. They don't have
'Kay.
they're not really addressing the foundational
Mm.
issues around the value proposition. So if I were gonna say, like, what my differentiators are, is one, I'm a before I was a before I do branding and marketing, I'm a consultant and coach. Like, I get our world and I get what it is. I also have end-to-end services because, I fill in that gap, and I go deep where everybody goes light, where I go into the brand positioning. Those might be like my primary differentiators. So I want to get you to the point to be able to say, like, okay, so given where everything is at, I'm
Mhm.
really focused on the high achieving woman in these situations. I get her and I get her psychology. Second is I'm not using a cookie cutter approach, that's just generic as it relates to toxic relationships. It's really understanding the dynamic of the toxic relationship to in the context of this particular person. So it's like it's highly tailored to this particular woman. Perhaps you provide her a supportive community, or something along those lines. Like there's other things that you're providing that's missing. So that you can so when you do the market scan, you could identify what's missing. One thing that might be missing is she's going to one-on-one counseling. Maybe she goes to other coaches, but they're not really, introducing her to other she's feeling lonely, like maybe that's one of the things that is getting in her way. She's feeling isolated and lonely without a lot of support, so she goes to these other solutions and she's not getting the community. So then you could say, like, I provide her a community experience that, like that could be one. I'm not saying that that's what you have to do, but it's really understanding like what's missing, the undermet and unmet needs, so that you could say, here's how I meet the undermet or unmet needs that other people are missing or overlooking.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that that's an important point to bring out is that the shame and the guilt is causing her not to reach out or want to be in communities, even though she wants to be in community. She wants to be understood because she feels alone and she feels isolated because she can't figure this out. Why can't I figure this out when I'm so successful over here? Why can't I do that?
Perfect.
That's really that question, and so she feels alone, she is afraid to talk more than just in a community, she's afraid to talk to anybody more than a one-on-one situation because she's tried to talk to, like, a friend or 2, and it's like, "Well, just leave him," like you were saying, "Well, why don't you just leave him then?" Or, "You could try harder," like some people are told, "You could try harder." In
So
there.
so in terms of what's in her way, it's a lot of confusion is one thing that's in her
Yep,
way. One thing might be like the lack of strategy, skills, and tools, to get there. But then there's this other component of loneliness, isolation, feeling judgment, shame
yep,
that is making it harder for her to make that empowered decision. So, in terms of like where she's at, she's got all these other things, but ultimately, all of that she wants to make an empowered, conscious decision so
yep,
that she can create success at work and success at home.
yes,
But what's in the middle, this 'cause what's in the middle is what you're solving for her.
correct. Yes.
Okay, so the solutions that she's trying, it's actually it sounds like it's exacerbating her shame and isolation.
Absolutely. It can be. Like, she can feel like she's got a strategy because that's what you get from DIY, right? You get a strategy, you get these steps, or you get try this or try that. And so, of course, she will try that, and it's not working because she's up against that wall. A toxic relationship, they're not willing to come forward.
Got it.
So there's no way that she can even get any positive feedback on these strategies that she's trying through the DIY or through therapy.
Perfect. So she's trying mostly DIY therapy, probably
Mhm.
some sort of like retreat healing experiences, going to
Absolutely.
mindfulness retreats.
Yep.
And what she's getting is like maybe short-term fixes, but no long-term gains. She's getting generic advice, but nothing specific for her. She's
Yes.
trying a lot of things and it's exacerbating her shame. And she feels even more isolated.
Correct. Yes.
And and now she meets you. So let's talk about you. From an empathy standpoint, why are you her perfect guide?
So from the empathy standpoint is having someone to listen to you deeply and be able to reiterate back
Uh-oh, you're
what the
frozen.
one oh, yeah, one is it back? Okay.
Yeah.
One is to be able to, well, empathize on a deep level.
No, not to show your empathy. We're gonna talk
No.
about that.
Okay.
If you're gonna say, like, why do you care about this particular person? Out of all the clients you could serve, why her? Like, if you were gonna say, I'm Brenda and I'm here to help you because, like, why do you care? Of all the clients you could have, why her?
Well, because that's my story. Because I relate to that. And deeply. And so that's been my experience, and that's what I've also been working on myself to find the solutions for, and have found it through the work that I do.
So you've been where she is and you could show her the way. You're the
Yeah.
right guide from that standpoint, is you've been there.
Yes.
Um, what is it about your credibility? So let's talk about your source of authority. Why should she trust you that you have a solution? So apparently so one thing that you just inherent in what you just said is you have personal experience with yourself of getting out of that situation. So that's
Yeah.
one credibility marker.
Okay.
You mentioned the certification of forgiveness coaching. Is there other certifications that you have?
Yeah, so I've gotten certified as a money coach. I've gotten certified as the forgiveness coach. I've also got certified as the grief coach. So I've got 3 specific and certifications in the area that actually will that helped me get through my own experience. That helped me heal through it because there's grief, of course, everywhere. Everything we do. The money story is a piece of it because it has to do with the beliefs and the patterns. So and the forgiveness is a key piece to it after, right? We hear the story, we look at what is missing, we actually work on the unmet need that is there for her that causes the people pleasing or the ability to not feel strong at home, but definitely at work. So there are those. And then there's a bunch of little I'm always learning. I'm a lifelong I'm always taking class, always learning different ways to do things and mindfulness, all of that.
So basically from a credential standpoint, it's multifaceted. It's not just like in one area.
Right.
It's looking at the different dimensions of the situations she might find herself in.
Very well put, Betsy. That's
And then and then you've the other part is like the results maybe with other people, like your social proof. So you've been doing this for a
mhm,
while. Have you
mhm.
at least gotten the results from at least one person that
Oh
you have seen come to the other side?
oh, absolutely.
How many
Oh,
like, what
yes.
would you say? It's like upwards of, hundreds? Would you say dozens?
Yeah, no, not hundreds because it's mine is has been more of a boutique kind
Yeah,
of coaching, right? So through the group coachings and through private coaching, there has been probably, I would say, about 100 that have gotten results that have been willing because some people come to me and they weren't willing to do what they thought that they were ready to do.
perfect.
So, yeah.
Okay, so we got a track record of at least 100.
Yeah.
So that's significant social proof. Is there anything else that you would say is work with me? I've been where you are and and I care about you. You're a younger version of me. So that's my empathy. My authority is that I have personally gone through the transformation process. I have studied multifaceted disciplines that relate to the different aspects of what you're in the middle of, and I've worked with at least 100 women have received the value
Mhm.
that this transformation that I'm promising.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's not dial into the differences of working with you. So you had um so you just mentioned that you're boutique.
Mhm.
Um is that a differentiator? Is it's like it's a boutique experience versus other coaching or or counseling, or is that not a differentiator?
I think that it is a differentiator, very customized to that person. It's not a cook I don't teach a cookie cutter. I don't. Yeah.
Is it customized to high achieving women? Like successful women?
Yes.
Okay, so that is a differentiator that other people don't focus on is it's customized to
Okay.
her.
Yes.
Is there something in your coaching approach? Like, so this is where we bring in, like, you help her kind of get into the root of some of her dynamics or what have you. But therapists might say that as well. Is there something that's unique about your coaching approach that helps her in a different way? Like, is it there a way that you engage?
What I hear my whole focus is safety. So, that's really important for someone who's going through having trauma and who is working through trauma, who it's being expressed in a romantic relationship or any kind of relationship. And so for me, what I do is there's a safety that I create, and there is a depth of listening and connecting of what I call the dots, that connecting the stories to where all you do is you talk to me and I can see already what's going on and be able to quickly give, an idea of what it is that gets to be validated by the client. Like, I'm not telling you what I'm saying, this is what I'm feeling and seeing because 'cause I'm very quick with that. I can see the
Hmm.
beliefs and the patterns, quicker. That's the feedback that I get, and that's what I know about myself, is 2 things. 1, people feel very safe automatically with me, which I think is really valuable. And the second piece is being able to connect the dots quickly by hearing their story and being able to get underneath it. And I'm not and what I do is they call it, the velvet glove, the velvet hammer. Because what I do is I bring it straight out because that's what high achieving women want. We don't want to be beaten around the bush. We want to know how can I fix this? How can I identify this? What do I need to do? And that's what I do in a very caring way.
So that's great. So one thing that's very different about you is your services are customized for her. You understand her psychology and what makes her tick that's different maybe from other women and is customized specifically for her. From that, you create a judgment-free safety zone where she can feel
Mhm.
like she could show up and not have all of her crap together and she can be wherever
Yeah.
she is. Third is you have it sounds like it's a combination, like, one is, like, really good listening, but it seems like really good diagnostic skills, where you can pinpoint the issues, but it seems like also in difference from coaches, what you're saying is that you also give more directive. You're not just asking a bunch of questions and
Mhm.
saying, "Oh, you have the wisdom." You're holding up a mirror and giving her clarity faster so she would be able to size it up, so she can get her experience validated faster.
Yes. Yes.
So there's a speed to clarity that you're providing her that you're so in terms of the value or outcome of what she gets from working with her, she's gonna make an empowered decision faster
Mhm.
than with other people.
Correct.
Um, and then you also have, like, all of these multidisciplinary type of things, so that seems like another differentiator is you're not coming at it from one discipline, but from multiple disciplines.
Yes.
So what's the value that those multiple disciplines are providing for her?
Well, it gives them the well-rounded there's not just one particular version of us. It's not just the intellect or it's not just emotions. We have to look at the whole person. We have to look at the whole dynamic. We have to look at the history along with present day and what she wants to achieve, who she wants to become. Right? So we have to be able to look at that, and that's what these disciplines actually add, is an ability to look at all areas and bring in some strategy and bring in some connection so that she can then move on and fill the because bottom line, she wants to feel fulfilled. Bottom line, she wants to feel comfortable in her own skin in every area of her life. And so that's what the disciplines allow for me is to be able to bring all of that together because it not only do I have my own life experience, but then I have these other ways that we can approach it so that she can get the goal that she's wanting to achieve.
So you're starting to plant the seeds around the next questions are about like what's the value or outcome she gets only because she's working with you. And it's like taking her initial goal and how you sweeten the deal. Like you make it better. And there's two parts of that value. There's the tangible and the intangible. You just mentioned the intangible is that she feels more comfortable in her own skin,
Okay.
which is that what you just said?
Yes, that
Okay.
is what I just said.
So thinking about being comfortable in our own skin and the speed to so it seems like from a value standpoint, just if we started putting buckets, there's a speed to her decision. So speed to clarity, speed to decision.
Mhm.
She's going to reduce the cycle time of hanging around in this scenario, with greater clarity. Like she's gonna be able to make an empowered decision with greater clarity, confidence. She's gonna be able to not just match. It sounds like when you say like she's comfortable in her own skin, she's not just gonna match her personal life to her professional, like her relationship to her professional. But it seems like if she's more comfortable in her own skin and she's free from this relationship, I imagine it will affect the professional as well.
Absolutely.
So, what's
Yeah.
going to be the impact on the professional side? So, how's her
Well,
success going to change?
Her success will change because she's gonna show up differently. She's gonna show up in a more confident way that in every area of her life, not just because how we do one thing is how we do everything. That's my take on things. So it's like my personal life does affect my professional life. So where she might be guarding herself and only pushing forward to prove herself in her professional life, she is now going to look at it more from a standpoint of, is this how I want to continue? Is this how I want to show up professionally? She can get a confidence. It's hard to explain. You get a confidence in a more solid way throughout your emotional, your mental, your physicalness, because there's nothing holding her back.
So, by working with you, she's going to get to her decisions. She's gonna get clarity faster.
Yes.
On the direction she wants to take. She's gonna be able to take more empowered actions to create the relationships at home that match her success. But it sounds like because she's comfortable in her own skin, she's kind of worked through things, you're going to elevate her success and amplify her happiness in her relationships. Like it's not just you're just not going to bring her up to whatever she said she wanted. It's going to go higher because she worked with you.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of like is like thinking about that is like thinking about like taking her goal of like I'm sure there's more things that we could say to put it to bake it into your brand positioning. But, you have your the worksheet that you and I are working on. What would be great in terms of your next steps is take all of this and put it into the worksheet and
Okay.
plug in the holes to make sure that this storyline is really, really clear. What we really want to get out of this is, who is your ideal client? And the biggest things that you want to get out of it is who they are and the problem that you solve. From the market scan is like, where are they going to that they've tried that hasn't worked and why hasn't it worked? So that we could position you as that dream guy that they would have. And we really want to be able to nail, in terms of like the unmet and undermet needs, like how you're different than all the other solutions.
Mhm.
Because then we could say at the end, is because she worked with you and all of these unique features that they get, she gets unique benefits that creates like whatever she initially wanted
Mm.
to be even better because she worked with you.
'Kay.
Okay, so what
I like
comments, questions, feedback do you have on where we're at? And do you feel like you can put that draft together around your customer journey or your client journey?
Yeah, I think having your questions and having, I like your, analogy of putting the blinders on and being able to see pull me back in from wandering off the path. But also the market. When you talk about just looking at this market scan or looking at the market itself, that's a different than I have looked at it before. Right? Everybody tells you what is the problem you're solving, but they always go for the pain points. And so the way that you're doing it is I'm looking at it as a journey, instead of just a pain point.
Right.
Here's a pain point, here's a solution. So what you've just suggested to me and the things that you've said, you really have a good way of putting it, synthesizing it so that I can get clearer on where I come in, what they need and where I come in.
And I think also just I thank you for mirroring some of that. And I'm glad that you saw like when it comes to the ideal client, it really is high horse blinders on and the market scan. You almost have to pretend that you don't exist so that
Yeah.
when you put yourself into it, you could see the value. And I think one of the things that coaches really struggle with, and consultants do the same thing, is we keep trying to make our methodology sexier. And we don't understand like the work we do is not fun. It's almost like a heart surgeon say, "You know what? Come work with me. I do a great job at cutting you open and I spread you out. And then we're going to look at all the ways that your heart's not working. And then I'm going to squeeze this and I'm going to put you on bypass." And like, nobody likes this. Like, this isn't
No.
fun. And
No.
so when we talk about it, it's like, yes, we do coaching. I'm going to help you like uncover all of your patterns and all the ways you're dysfunctional. You're actually turning somebody away because nobody likes our process. Our
Right?
processes are not fun. We're asking people to be vulnerable and show up with our dirty laundry. Like, no, we need to talk about the outcomes that they're going to get or the features is I'm going to give you safety. I'm going to help you quickly overcome long-term patterns that have held you back. I'm going to help you get absolute rock solid clarity on what the empowered decision is for you so that you could step into the kind of success at home and at work that matches faster than you could have done it on your own. And I'm going
Uh-huh.
to do it in a way where you're going to feel more of yourself in your own home, which not only will get you that, but also I'm going to help you take elevate your
Elevate.
success. I'm
Yeah.
gonna elevate that success, and I'm gonna give you success in your relationships, whether you have a formal romantic relationship or not.
Beautiful.
Bam,
Yes. Right
like
on.
people want us that so they're like, "Sign me up, pay $5,000."
Yeah.
Like, "I'll take you through my worksheet, and I'm gonna help you explore all of your long-term codependent patterns and all the ways you screwed up all of your relationships, and why everything you're doing is sucking, and all the reasons why you're accountable for all the reasons why you've had these failures, and I'm gonna help you see all of that, and then eventually" no, like
No.
we're never going to make our coaching or consulting sound sexy because the heart of our work is transformation. So I just want people to imagine, if you're listening in on this, I just want you to imagine, like, if you ever watch Grey's Anatomy, they get way too excited about surgery, and it's like
Yeah.
you don't want people to say, I'm way so excited about coaching, I'm going to help you like dig in and see all of your wounds. Like, no. It's vulnerable work. Talk about the transformation.
Yes. Well said.
So, okay, awesome. So you got your marching orders?
I have my marching orders.
Okay.
Thank you.
So for those who are listening, I hope that you got a lot of value out of my conversation with Brenda. I would have Brenda, wait, Brenda, can you give your website address that can be checking in on you and see how your evolution is going?
Yeah. It's Brenda Reiss, Reiss coaching.com. And then
Okay.
Brenda Reiss Coaching on social media. But the website, yeah, what we're going to transform is brendareisscoaching.com.
Perfect. So you can be checking out Brenda's site. My website might be in the middle of a strategic transformation. So you could check out my website at
Mhm.
www.betsydordan.com and see how I'm up leveling my positioning and going through the same thing that we just went through in this call. And if you enjoy these kind of conversations around how consultants and coaches could up level and elevate their positioning and their impact, please definitely subscribe to the Consulting Matters podcast. And I will, well, just until next time, I'll see you later. Thank you so much for listening.